welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat presents Talk of the Kingdom. I'll never stop being amused at that title. Zelda fans all over the world, we're finally here. Today is the official release date of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Woo! We did it. We did it. We just waited. We didn't work on the game, but still, we're very excited. After 6 years of waiting, several delays, trailer reveals, and agonizing over every single frame of every trailer, we can finally play Zelda. Or you can. We're hosting a show. I'm your host, Brian Altano, along with my incredible crew of Zelda obsessives, Tom Marks, Rebecca Valentine, Casey DeFreitas, and Seth Macy. Seth, Casey, hello. Thank you.
Hello.
I thank you for bringing Zelda stuff onto the show today. I can't believe we're here. Today is our.
I can't.
Yeah, I know. This is going to be our biggest show yet because we'll be covering the official IGN review and guide for The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom right here with Tom Marks and Casey. Tom has played over 100 hours. Casey, you've played tons and tons and tons. We're going to talk about it. We're going to stay as spoiler-free as humanly possible. Obviously, everybody has wildly different definitions of what spoiler means. So tread carefully. But we're gonna. Basically, anything we covered in our review is safe, right? Sort of ish.
Yeah, there's some things that we're gonna be a little bit more top level here, so that we don't, because we dig a little bit deeper, because it's really important for the review to kind of explain what makes this game so good. So if you want more detail, go read or watch the review. But we'll keep it more spoiler free than that even.
Yeah. So if you're listening in your cars and we do approach a section that seems spoilery, we will warn you, and you can just hold your horn down for a full minute. No, don't do that. It's crazy out there.
And to be clear, we're talking more about gameplay sort of like surprises rather than we're not gonna spoil the story at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not gonna talk about the story.
Nope. No story stuff today. Link is back. So that's
spoiler! No. Come on, man.
Okay, so let's get right into this because I'm so excited to talk to you all about this. Tom,
hi.
How is The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom? I didn't prep a lot of questions for this, so I want you guys to just brain dump on me here today.
Yeah, it's fine.
What?
Fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for listening.
No. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
We gave it a 10 out of 10.
I gave it a 10 out of 10.
I heard rumors you were.
It was a joke. I was jokingly saying, I put in the doc when I really first wrote it down, I put in 11.
Yep.
And it is such a good game that people took that seriously. There were people on our video team being like, well, we gotta get a new graphic going for that because the score graphic doesn't go up to it. And I was like, no.
Dan's gonna have to write a whole column explaining how a review system works now.
Yeah.
Somebody told you the score graphic doesn't. There's already a 1 in 10. We could have just doubled that.
No.
Flawless logic. No, it
requires too much power.
It is phenomenal. So the top level stuff is it sounds like hyperbole when I explain how good this game is, but the final line of my first paragraph of my review is that it somehow makes Breath of the Wild feel like a first draft. Which is true. It is crazy to say, but there is so much in this game. It is so big. There are so many new ideas. And then also there are so much of what made the original so good, just sort of more of it and expanded, that it's just wildly impressive what Nintendo has managed to do with it.
So we can immediately, we could have for a while, and most of us have been, but dismiss the idea that this was just DLC.
No, that's crazy talk.
Yeah, okay.
So yes, I understand the impulse to be like, why did this game take 6 years? Just looking at trailers and stuff.
Sure.
And it's because they didn't show most of it, right? There is an enormous amount of stuff. There is way more map than just, it's the same map, right? There's a lot of those surprises. I do go into more detail in the review if you want to know more, but also are really fun to explore and learn for yourself. It's not just a DLC by any means. What I will say, though, and this is, I think, a key distinction within this, is it doesn't feel like a revolutionization of what Breath of the Wild was doing.
Right.
In that, when you went from Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild, it was like, this is insane. This is brand new. This is this incredible, wild thing that is so different and has changed the gaming industry. This doesn't necessarily feel like that sort of sequel, but it is better than Breath of the Wild by basically every metric.
That's amazing.
So it is. I think that's that's an important distinction to have, because I don't want people going in being like, this is going to be the jump Breath of the Wild was.
Right.
But it is a big enough jump over Breath of the Wild that, like, I very easily am like, yeah, it's just a better game.
Do you think
no doubt in my mind.
Do you think we see in the next like 4 or 5 years all these games coming out that feel like they have building mechanics? Because that was what happened with Breath of the Wild, right? Like Breath of the Wild came out and suddenly, like a couple of years later, we had this rash of games that were like open world, big grassy fields, like trying to do a similar thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of them seem to have kind of missed the point of Breath of the Wild. I mean, a couple of them I think got it. I mean, I think Elden Ring fully understood the assignment, and
Yeah.
you know, several others did too. But
Genshin Impact and
but
stuff.
I'm curious, like, what, like, do you think, you say it's not a revolution, and that makes perfect sense to me, but do you think it's the kind of game where a bunch of developers are going to be like, oh crap, like all these development meetings next week are like, okay, we got to pivot?
I don't think so, actually. Because to me, I don't think Breath of the Wild sort of changed what an open world game could be in my eyes in a very significant way, and the industry reacted as a result. I don't necessarily think Tears of the Kingdom changes what building or crafting in games can be.
Right.
It's just the way that it uses it is so phenomenal for this game. So I don't know if we're necessarily going to see a lot of people sort of jumping on that bandwagon. Also, partly, I think people are still sort of catching up with Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, that's true.
The fact that Nintendo made this already is like, yeah, they still got to get the open world part that Breath of the Wild did down, and Nintendo's like, oh, we moved past that. We're way ahead of that already.
That's the thing. It's like there are clearly like disparate parts of Tears of the Kingdom that have been attempted in games before, but from my perspective, it's like taking all of those things, throwing them into this beloved IP, and keeping them in an open world that has all these, you know, integrated systems stacking on top of each other. That's the kind of big revolution here. And like, you know, the leap from Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild was necessary because that was sort of a concept that kind of reached the end of its lifespan, right? Like we grew up with 3D Zeldas, we loved them. They were iterated so many different times and so well. But by Skyward Sword, we were kind of like, okay, what's next? And then we got Breath of the Wild. And I don't think we're at the point just yet where we're like, revolutionize it again, you know?
Yeah.
Where like they're building on something great.
I will say I don't know where they go from here. Right? Not that they need to worry about that right now. Like, we should all just sort of revel in what this game is for the moment. But I just don't know. I played Breath of the Wild and I said, I don't know how they top this. And now I'm playing this and I'm like, well, they topped it, but I don't know how they top this, right? Like,
Give them a couple years.
So I wanted to pick your brain a bit about, and Casey, feel free to chime in too, about sort of the new mechanics in here. And I got to experience them a bit in the preview event, but stuff like Fuse and Ultrahand, your review mentions that they complement each other very well.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about how these new systems sort of change the way you interact with things in this game.
Yeah, so building is the biggest part. The Ultrahand system is, I guess an important distinction, I say this in my review as well, is it's not Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts, right? Where that game was sort of, you know, a fun game in its own right, but a disappointment to Banjo-Kazooie fans because it became all about building.
Yeah.
It was a building game that had sort of Banjo-Kazooie stuff going on. This game doesn't become about building, but it is in almost every part of it. Like, most of the shrines are built around sort of physics or building puzzles. Not all of them, definitely not all of them, but a lot of them are built around that in really clever ways. If you are up on a sky island and you want to get somewhere really quick, you can just build a ship or a plane and just go. So here's a distinction. Here's a thing that I didn't really get into in the review that I think is really important, which is, do you remember when we first saw that trailer of Link on a glider and he was gliding down to, like, you know, one of the things we now know are called geoglyphs, these like sort of Nazca lines on the ground.
It's a lot of new words for me today.
Nazca
need some sounds.
The Nazca, never mind. Anyway, the line art on the ground.
Wikipedia, folks.
Anyway, we saw
the big...
Yeah, the big sort of,
All right.
The sky rocks, the float, the islands?
No, on the ground. Anyway.
You might not have seen this. I don't know how much this... I think it's been like kind of in the background.
You're like, it's just a thing.
Are we describing mountains?
We're describing the ground.
No.
Just
okay, like, you know,
the
like,
ground.
you don't imagine, like crop circles, but like way bigger and a shape.
Yes.
God. Okay.
you go.
Yes. Got it. All right. Thank you all for crowdsourcing.
Hear in the background in various trailers. This isn't a spoiler.
Yes. What was I saying?
There's stuff on
Right.
the ground.
It is to someone.
So we saw that trailer of Link on one of those gliders,
Yeah.
and we were all like, wow, I wonder if there's like a point where you can like jump on one of those gliders and fly, and like that's
Right.
like that's your fast travel system instead. No, you have an inventory full of dozens of gliders, and at any point you can just be like, I'm just gonna pull out a glider and put a rocket on it and go, because they're in your inventory and they are consumable items that are thrown at you like candy. And so like you have dozens of these things. They're called Zonai devices, and there's rockets, there's fans, there's glider, there's wheel, there's two different kinds of wheels, there's
Right.
batteries to extend the life
Wait a
of
minute.
them. There's a flamethrower with a hot
There's
air
so
balloon
many.
that you can connect, right? It just keeps going. And there's ones that are like to help your creativity too that are not fun in their own right. Like there's a stabilizer that when you hit it, it makes whatever it's attached to stand directly upright. So if you want to make a really dumb, weird creation that's totally lopsided, when you turn it on, it pops upright and it's riding on one wheel or whatever you want to do, right?
That's a huge relief
nice. Stunting on
because
'em.
my
Okay.
biggest fear around Tears of the Kingdom is I suck at building.
Right.
I'm not a very visual person. Like I really struggle with like creative pursuits that involve understanding, being able to envision something and then put it together. And I know I'm not alone in that. I know there's other people like me. And so every time you've sent me clips of this game and I've laughed at them because a lot of times you're just slapping a rocket on something and
Yeah.
and it's very funny. But my imagining is that that's something that's very funny to do in the overworld, but maybe not exactly efficient if you're trying to solve puzzles or get places. And so I have a big fear in this game that I'm going to need to solve a puzzle and I'm just going to look at a big pile of logs and gears and just be like,
I think it's approachable enough that you will not feel that way.
okay.
I think that the tools are powerful, but also pretty welcoming in that regard. And the fact though that like these zonized devices, like all the things I mentioned, are not special or rare, right? Like you just get those things and you get tons of them. And so the fact that you never have to, like all these tools are so empowering to just be like, yeah, just go, have fun, be creative, build whatever you want. Oh, it didn't work. Cool. You got 12 more gliders you can try it with. You know,
Yeah.
like,
And
it's
also,
great.
just to be clear, like you don't. It's not like the game throws you in. You have access to 20 different Zonai devices,
Yes,
and
yes,
it tells
yes.
you to figure it out. It kind of trickles them out as you explore, and the more you explore, the more devices you have access to, because you get these the portable ones from. We covered this in Brian's preview. Zonai device dispensers, which are basically just the big like gotcha machines,
So, yeah.
like
Yeah, they're capsule
the big
machines.
Really
gumball,
funny.
the capsule machines. Yeah, so you put in a material called Zonai charges, and you get Zonai devices out, and every single dispenser has a different assortment of objects, but you will also occasionally encounter these Zonai devices in the world outside of the capsules, but you won't be able to take it with you.
Right.
And the game does a really cool thing where if the Zonai device is around, you can probably use it with something in the world to do something you maybe are supposed to do.
right.
But it never forces you to build anything from scratch. Like they have these floating block platforms that you can just attach the rockets to. You don't have to build a flying machine from scratch. You can just like grab a rocket, slap it on something, and you're off. And that's all you have to do. But you can make a really cool flying machine. And I think it's really neat that the game gives you that choice in how complicated you want to be with your builds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally
Love
agree.
That line in Tom's review really echoed that, Casey, about if you're not super interested, and I'm paraphrasing you and butchering it, but if you're not super interested in building, the game provides you kind of shortcuts around doing that. But if that's the thing you want to do, then you can go full Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome
Yes.
because like I'm creative. I am a visual person. I do like to build stuff. I'm also tired, and so sometimes after a long day, I don't want to make an entire device. I just want to push a button and fly across the thing and land. But sometimes I do, right? Sometimes I'm in the mood for something like that. So I think
Sometimes you are the guy from the
Yeah.
Aussie commercial.
So I think that like having that sort of accordion approach is really smart because for people who really want to get into it, you have that option. For people who don't want that and just really want to play Zelda, it seems like that you can just do that, right?
Yeah. I mean, the building is definitely part of the world.
Right.
But yes, you don't have to go hard into building if you don't want to. You really can just play Zelda and then occasionally use the building in the same way that you would use magnesis.
Yeah.
Rather than as this crazy complicated tool or whatever.
You also you had a scene in your review where you were driving a car that you made, which is still a sentence to get used to saying when, in regards to Legend of Zelda, you know, a high fantasy game.
Yeah. It could have had a cannon and lasers on it, but I didn't go that far.
And you reach the end.
Restraint is important.
Yeah, you hit like a cliff or like a mountain or something like that, and you're like, I don't know what to do. And then you're like, oh yeah, I can make this thing fly, and you just did that. And so I think there's going to be like a lot of those aha moments, but also like that the part where you have to remember that that's a thing that you can do, right? It's recognizing that that's all language that's accessible to you during this game.
Watching this clip of me flying this car, I kid you not, while this footage was being recorded, I was just giggling like a child.
Yeah.
It was because it lets you try those things. It lets you just say, well, what if this doesn't work? Or what if this does work? Let's just try it out. And one thing that's kind of interesting too is, you remember the DLC added the travel medallion?
Yeah.
Travel medallion is in this game, which feels
nice.
And you don't get it immediately, right? And I won't spoil how to get it, but like it feels so
Kill Ganon.
Yeah, it feels so appropriate in this game with so many sky islands and so many places where you could be like, well, maybe I'll just try jumping off this cliff, and if it doesn't work out, you're like, okay, I can go back, right? So it's also they've cut out the frustration of failure in a lot of really smart ways.
Yeah, I've loved every clip you've sent me. I've just watched and gone he out loud in the middle of the office. It reminds me weirdly, not the building bit, but like the sort of silly contraptions. It reminds me of how I play Fortnite, which is I run around, I get a bunch of weapons, and then I realize I'm late for something because the storm is coming, and so I pile into a car, turn the radio up really loud, and just go it's ridiculous directions. And that's like all the clips you've sent me have been kind of a little bit like that, like, all right, I gotta be somewhere, and then you just sort of it's great.
Now a lot of that is functionally built around Ultrahand, right? Like this is you picking up things in the environment or from your inventory, almost literally gluing them together with that Nickelodeon gack.
Yeah.
And then, driving off into the sunset or into the sky or whatever. But another mechanic that's new this time around is fuse, right? And I wanted to kind of pick both of your brains about how much, now that you've both sunk a ton of time into this game, how much does that sort of like functionally change the way you interact with things? And how much does it change the weapon durability conversation and stuff like that?
A lot.
Okay.
I think at least.
I agree.
One thing you learn at some point pretty early in the story is they're just like, all the weapons are broke now, sorry. And so like
we've heard your complaints and we've broken all of them.
So like most of the base weapons are pretty crappy on their own. And so you have to use this fuse system to get the most out of what you've got. Like you can just attack with normal weapons still. It's just they'll break quicker, they're not as strong, that sort of thing.
Right.
And like things like fire rods or fire wands and fire swords and stuff don't exist. And so the only way to get those things is by using fuse, by saying, okay, well, this fire item or this part from a fire Lizalfos, if I put it on this spear, suddenly this spear does fire damage, right? And so it totally recontextualizes how you get those special items. And then it also changes a lot of where your best items are coming from, because if the base stats of weapons are much lower and the fuse items are much stronger, then a lot of the power and the play style and the sort of, the core of a weapon comes from what you're attaching to it.
Right.
Which is sitting in your inventory, not in your weapon wheel. So you have 1,000 Bokoblin horns that can be a weapon at a moment's notice, right? As long as you have a sword to put them on.
It's pronounced Bobo Klein, by the way.
Oh, excuse me.
It's actually mispronounced.
Oh wait, I thought it was Baba Klobbin.
Yeah,
you can. You know what? It's whatever you want.
I've always said Bokoblins. I know it's canonically it's Bokoblins.
Bokoblins.
Oh my god, I'm glad you said that. I thought everyone was doing a bit for a second.
No, yeah, it's Bokoblins.
I was that too. Yeah, Beth and I were.
Bokoblin.
Yeah, no, you were halfway there.
Goblins.
Yeah.
And I know. I'm sure Casey has and the wiki team are going crazy with fusion stuff right now.
Yeah,
because
Casey, I was going to ask you what was like one of your favorite weapons you fused, or one of the silliest weapons you built.
Man, so I really like attaching. This is such a silly. You get really good weapons from attaching your really pricey gems that you're tempted to sell onto magic rods.
Yeah,
and attaching. I think most recently I found an icicle in the world and I attached it to a spear, and now I can freeze enemies. And I love doing that.
Yeah, but
just
if
an
you pull it
icicle.
out, if you
It's just
pull it out
hanging
in a
out.
hot place, the icicle melts off your weapon.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. It's so cool. It's so interesting. And I think the thing so there are fusions. You can fuse anything. The game lets you do whatever. But then there are the game doesn't have an actual term for it, but I like to call like true fusions, where the weapon, instead of just looking like a sword with like a rock attached to it, it actually changes and looks differently.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
interesting.
You can attach
like the blade will disappear
Yes.
down to the hilt and get replaced with whatever you put on it.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like you stumbled upon something.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like when
Yeah.
you make a really good elixir in the first one.
Are these only
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
special
Yeah.
music.
Are these only visually distinct, or do they also like do more damage, like generally better?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I haven't tested it that much.
I'm not sure either. They
I don't think
definitely-
so.
There's definitely some weird things where, like, if you put a spearhead on a sword, then, like, sometimes, or like a weapon that's kind of more supposed to be a spearhead onto a sword, and it replaces it, then suddenly your sword is really short, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you do get rewarded for, like, figuring out sort of,
Yeah.
like, oh, this should go on the end of a long weapon, not on a handle, right?
So
Yeah, so it's not necessarily a damage bonus, but it's a
Right.
handling bonus, so you'll have an easier time with the weapon if you're
Interesting.
doing it
Okay.
quote unquote right.
Can
But
I-
it doesn't punish you that much for doing it quote unquote wrong.
Can I tell you my favorite thing I've put on a thing?
Please.
yeah, get those car horns ready, folks.
Flamethrower on a boomerang.
Wait.
Yeah.
Yes!
Wait. What? Hold on.
It is-
Explain that.
A terrible idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
I threw it. It immediately lit me and the grass around me on fire. I was burning to death, and then it started coming back.
So the flamethrower Zonai, you fused it to a boomerang.
Yeah, all the Zonai devices are fusible to weapons,
Okay.
including the gliders.
And shields.
And shields. Okay, so so you threw it and it immediately burned you, the ground, and then everything it touched, and then came back to burn you again.
Yeah, and I caught it
Yes.
on fire.
This is good. This is a good video.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
10 out of 10,
And
truly.
And I do want to mention these aren't the end all be all best kind of weapons, because the flamethrower will stop when your battery runs out. So like the
Right.
Zonai devices are good
okay.
for like certain case uses, but you can't just like infinitely fire boomerang.
you know how
Things to
big
death.
this
Right.
game is?
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
You know how big this game is? This is the second longest review I've ever written. It's one of the longest video reviews IGN has ever published. I did not mention batteries once because I did not have time.
What was the longest review?
Longest review I've ever written was Marvel's Avengers.
Okay.
But that didn't fully count because I wrote like 3 reviews in progress. And so it was like kind of the combination of a bunch of reviews. So it had some advantage to it on that one. Yeah, this was
Big toss up on what I'm going to play this weekend. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I had one more question about that for you, though. My big worry watching a lot of these clips with how Fuse works is my worry is that the inventory system is just going to make me very angry. Because I remember that was a big criticism of Breath of the Wild, is that the inventory was just kind of chaotic. And all
was a
over the
lot.
place.
It's a lot, yeah.
Navigate. And like I've seen, I mean, when you're fusing, you're like pulling up a menu and you're just scrolling through like 200 items or something. Like what?
Yeah.
Is there anything done to alleviate that?
So the menu from the pause screen is better because it's not in individual tabs under like sub tabs under each category. Do you remember
Right.
in Breath of the Wild,
Yes.
it would be like you'd get to materials and then there'd be like 6 pages of materials.
Yeah.
Now you just scroll down.
Okay.
So that's not like, it doesn't solve the problem, but it definitely makes it less annoying to navigate.
You can also sort
Yeah.
that menu, so
Thank
you can sort
goodness.
it. But you can sort it by attack power, by category, and by most used.
Yes.
That's
which
nice.
is very useful.
Very
It is still annoying that
Yeah.
bananas, bombs, and Zonai devices are all in the same list of stuff, right? So when you're scrolling through, it's like what the heck? But the most used category sorting thing is super valuable because you basically just say like, oh, okay, I'm using bomb arrows a lot, so the bomb arrows just naturally go to the front. Or
Does it also sort in your quick menu when you do that?
You can do either, yeah.
Great, good,
Yeah.
okay.
Nice.
You mentioned bombs. I actually wanted to bring that up as like that was a thing that was kind of a concern of mine because I loved spamming bombs in Breath of the Wild so much, and here it seems like they're not an infinite resource at all.
Nope.
You can throw them and you can fuse them to things, but they're a little bit harder to come by. So that does
Bomb flowers.
Yeah. Did that change?
back, baby.
Did that change the way you kind of interacted with like? I don't know, cheating almost, because like I use bombs a lot in Breath of the Wild to like just clear out enemy camps or like kind of annoy people.
They're also like not very strong in Breath of the Wild, right?
No,
like you can clear out enemy camps with them, but you kind of have to throw a lot of bombs over and over and over again.
Yeah.
By making them a consumable resource that you have to go find, they're also more powerful, I think, or at least that was my impression. I don't know about you, Casey. I think they hit harder in this game, at least from maybe I'm totally wrong about that, but that was my impression. And it lets them be more useful and also more valuable, right? And that's like that's I think very good.
Yeah.
It obviously is not like, I think there's going to be people who are annoyed that bombs aren't infinite, and they will be totally justified in their opinion of that, right? But I did not mind the change. I thought it was cool kind of how it recontextualized bombs, not for the better or the worse necessarily.
Does it?
Yeah, I didn't.
No,
sorry,
go for
I
it.
was just gonna add. I didn't mind it either. I think there's so many options in Tears of the Kingdom that you won't miss them as much because there's so many other ways and other things that you can do that is not bombs.
Okay, that's awesome to hear. I was going to ask you also, Casey, and feel free to chime in, Tom. Does it feel like weapon durability is more durable this time? Like, does that feel like less of a present issue now that the fuse system is so there and you can constantly kind of like pull stuff, almost out of thin air and keep fighting? Like, did that? Because I know like in a big battle with a Lionel in Breath of the Wild, you might go through two or three swords, right?
Yeah. Oh, that still happens.
Still happens.
Yeah,
Okay.
it still happens.
Okay, got it.
So here's the thing though. I think this game throws crap base weapons at you quite a lot. Like you're exploding rocks and it's just like, here's 3 rusty halberds, have fun, or like claymores or whatever. And the thing is, I think you are less devastated about the loss of a weapon in Tears of the Kingdom because you can always just make a new one.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you will always have an inventory full of materials that are really good for making weapons. So if the weapon you're currently using breaks, you just get whatever base weapon is lying around and you can just fuse another good material onto it. And that feels a lot better than having to go and find a brand new weapon of the same caliber because you can kind of just make one at will.
And at the same time, and this is another thing that I just didn't talk about in my review that I think, Casey, y'all have been investigating on the wiki team too, is like weapons are more interesting now, the base weapons, because the different regions or sets a weapon comes from have an impact on how that weapon fights. So like a royal guard, or what is it? It's like the guard sword or something like that. Like all of the guard sword, guard halberd, or whatever. I don't remember the exact name.
Yeah.
Like those all have improved flurry rush capabilities.
Right.
All the Gerudo weapons, when you attach a thing to them, they get more damage than you normally would from the attachment, but not as much durability. So they're like the glass cannon weapons.
Interesting.
The Zora weapons all increase in damage when they're wet or when you're fighting in rain.
Are crazy attack buffs, by the way.
Yeah,
like I reloaded a save and I was like, oh, my most powerful weapon is gone, and it was like more powerful by like 30 damage. It was because it wasn't wet anymore. I didn't notice. Yeah, it's crazy.
So there's opportunities. Like weapons are both more replaceable and more interesting depending on what you want to find. And if you have a base sword that has 18 damage, let's say, and you've put a 30 damage attachment onto it, then your weapon's now 48, right? But if that breaks and you find a 10 base sword, but you still have another one of those 30 damage items in your inventory, then now your weapon's 40, but it's like, that's not a huge difference because most of the damage is coming from the attachment.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of like, if you hate durability and you hated that in Breath of the Wild, this is probably still going to annoy you a little bit. But there's so many little
Those
changes
people can't be made to be happy, so it's fine.
Yeah,
but
that's-
there's
you know,
so many
that's okay.
there's so many changes to the system as a whole that just make durability less of a thing on your mind at any given time.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have talked about Fuse, we've talked about Ultrahand, we've talked about the inventory. One of the things that kind of came out of the preview that myself and Casey did, and so, sort of a general consensus among people that were at that event, was that the controls take a bit to get used to. They can feel a little overwhelming. They're a little cumbersome. I mentioned that I still hit the horse whistle randomly here and there.
I do too.
It still happens, right? Now that you both have played significant time with this game, did it become second nature to you? Did it become like not a thing that was really you were overstepping or pressing the wrong things here and there? Or
I mean, I definitely was still pressing the wrong things here and there.
Okay.
The truth of the matter is that the Switch controller, and I played on a Pro controller almost the entire time I played.
Yeah.
Is being overworked. But like, so I was still pressing buttons wrong, but I also got a lot of muscle memory in a way that was like, once you get used to some of these systems, like for example, attaching items to an arrowhead mid-flight while you're firing was super clunky to me because you got to do it one item at a time at first, and then by halfway through my playtime, I was rapid firing things from my inventory without thinking about it. And I think that the preview event probably was frustrating controls partly by the nature of they gave you just everything and said go. Right. The Zelda Tears is really still very good at sort of easing you into some of that stuff, teaching you slowly in the same way that the Great Plateau did, right? Where it didn't just give you all the abilities at once. It sort of put you through these trials to figure them out.
Yeah.
This starting area does a really, really good job of tutorializing this game without it feeling like a hand-holdy tutorial.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is one of the best tutorial areas I have ever played.
Oh man.
And
Nintendo
I've played
really
a lot of
good
games.
at this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've played a lot of games.
Like, there's even a point where it asks you if you need to remember how to do things, and you can just say no. And
Wow.
That was going to be my question. I've been playing through Breath of the Wild. I'm like 45 hours into it again, and I'm wondering like how much of that is going to carry over. Like I'm great at flurry rushes.
Yeah.
Is my timing gonna like go over to the new one, or am I gonna have to sort of switch things up a little?
No, I think those skills will be transferable for sure.
All my hard work is gonna pay off.
Some of the things you're gonna have to relearn, like you don't just equip arrows anymore, right? You have to pull out, like I said, individual items you have to attach to the arrow as you're firing them. So that sort of thing, that muscle memory you'll have to build back up. But the combat itself is not wildly different, right? Throwing items changes a lot of things. The different sort of like arrowheads can change a lot of things. It changes the feel of it or the strategies you can do, but it doesn't wildly change, the combat itself, which is still.
The thing is just. Sorry.
No, yeah, go ahead.
The thing is, you have to remember you have all of these new tools in your arsenal that you can use in combat, because that was one of the things where I just kept forgetting I could do that. Like, I know there's a portion in one of the trailers where they use the ability recall on a spiky ball that your enemies throw down a hill, and you can just reverse it and send it right back at them. And it's those kind of things that you just kind of forget you can do.
Yeah, it took me a very long time to remember I had Ascend, that ability that lets you go up through ceilings.
Right.
Which once you start, like, the sort of portal thing of thinking with portals, quite literally, it opens up some doors. Because the first time I jumped down a well, right, because there's wells in the game that you can explore for little treasures or whatever. The first time I jumped down a well, there was no ladder to get back out of it. And I was like, wait, what do I do? And I literally teleported to a nearby shrine because I was like, I guess I'm just stuck. And then I was like, oh, wait, I can just go through the ceiling and go back to the surface. And it's fine.
Right.
Awesome.
Talking about controls, I know I'm not an expert on this, so I'm not like fully sure what questions to ask, and I don't know how much you've thought about this, but like I remember when Breath of the Wild came out, there was kind of some conversation about it not being a super accessible game, specifically because of the controller mapping. And I know you can swap like a couple buttons around, but it seems like I don't remember what the customization was, but I remember it not being like ideal for people. So I wonder if there was anything added this time around to make that better.
So I'm not an accessibility expert. I do not know, like, I cannot speak for that community, but as far as I have seen from seeing some other people this morning, and from what I saw in game, it doesn't seem like this is much better.
Oh, that's a shame.
I saw a piece from Laura Kate Dale and another one from Steve Saylor. Both have accessibility reviews of Tears of the Kingdom.
Go follow them on Twitter, by the way.
Yeah, definitely check those out.
Follow them on Twitter. Go check those out. I'm sure there's other great people out there. I don't mean to, slight anybody else, but those were the ones that I kind of saw this morning. And yeah, as far as I can tell, the consensus is like Nintendo didn't really do much in that department.
And guys,
yeah, but so that there's no but. That's a shame. But also, I'm not an expert to fully sort of evaluate that side of things.
Yeah.
fair enough.
We were talking a bit about what's new and what's different in this game, and I think a lot of the conversation going up to launch, and based on the very, very little that we've seen of Tears of the Kingdom until today for many of us, was that Hyrule just looked the same, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was a whole thing of like, Hyrule's back, and
It's DLC.
Yeah. And so I wanted to pick both your brains about how you feel now, having played a ton of it. The Hyrule from Breath of the Wild has returned. Air quotes, right? Expand on why that is both correct and very, very incorrect.
So basically every area has changed in little ways, right? Some in bigger ways, right? So like the main, again, I'm not going to get into details of spoilery stuff, but like the main sort of hubs that you have to go to all have undergone pretty significant changes that you will have to reckon with. There's certain new paths in certain places. There's also just caves everywhere. So blank hillsides suddenly are, prolonged expeditions to find treasure or whatever. There's also, like, Casey, I don't know if you got this sense too. It just felt like the game was sending me down different paths. Like the main sort of hub town in this that you go to right after you get off of the Great Plateau equivalent is in the center of Hyrule Field, and then sends you somewhere that is not the Dueling Peaks, right? Which is the beginning of Breath of the Wild. And suddenly, like, I was walking through areas that I was sure I had been in Breath of the Wild, and they just didn't feel like areas I had been. Just because of the context of it, how little things had changed, the way they were sending me down it, right? That map was huge, and they didn't use all of it.
Right.
I don't know if you had the same experience. Yeah.
No, I did. Like, honestly, I played a little bit of Breath of the Wild again, like leading up to Tears of the Kingdom, but it's been a really long time since I played it thoroughly.
Right.
But there were still things that were different. Like, I think you'll find like stables still in the same place, but even just the environmental changes make things feel a lot different. And I think there are things you will think and actually you don't. that's the most I can say without spoiling things, and that's all on the original map, and just the way that things have changed. Like like they're the Sky Islands, like everyone knows about that. There are now there's stuff on the ground that has affected as well. So there's just a lot more to explore, a lot more different terrain changes that I think you don't expect, and different ways to get around things that you have to do differently now.
Yeah. And here's what I will say. If that was it, if that was all this game was, if it didn't have the Sky Islands and it didn't have kind of this other sort of thing, section to it, I think I would be a little bit let down. But there is so much more than that it is not it feels fun to explore a similar area that has changed a little bit rather than just repetitive, because there's so many other places to go see new things that you don't need to get it all from, it's super fun to go back to Terrytown and see how they're doing, or like go to the Rito village and run into the little bird kids that you helped and be like, what are they up to, right?
Do they still need wood in Terrytown? Are they good on wood for a while? I had to bring them like 1,000 pieces of wood.
Yeah, I think they're good on wood.
They're good on wood. Thank you, Terrytown, for finally getting your lives together over there.
Now they need other things.
Yeah, they couldn't figure out how to grow a tree. They could make the nicest houses in Breath. Sorry, I'm still mad about this. I just did this quest like a couple weeks ago. The Sky Islands look incredible. I got to play a little bit up there, but like, does that feel like a cohesive area to you? Is exploring them fun? Does it feel sort of disparate? It seems like there was a lot of like little clusters of things to do.
Yeah, the only cohesive area that is a Sky Island, really, apart from like some later stuff I won't get into, is the main sort of first area. Most of the Sky Islands feel similar to larger sort of cave or shrine challenges. They are largely disconnected from each other. They're fairly short. They're these little sort of experiences to go up and fight your way through, or puzzle your way through, or figure out how to get to a place, Right. They aren't a second map, right? They are not a second Hyrule in the sky. That doesn't mean, that's not to speak down on them. They are really cool. They're really fun to explore. There's a ton of them, right? All of that stuff is still true. Just setting expectations, it is not like, you're not going to go up there and, see the sky people that you meet and give the sky quests or whatever. Like, it's not that level of thing.
Yeah.
But it is still.
Seth just canceled his pre-order.
Yeah, I was. There's still been writing fanfic about Sky People since the first trailer dropped. But okay.
There's still tons to explore though, and there's still lots of story things that you can do up there, and like there's enough. It's just definitely not like a continent in the sky. It is islands.
Yeah.
Right.
It's almost
Is there
similar to like
any analog to like? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was gonna say it's almost similar to like smaller Wind Waker islands, right?
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to really quickly point out that Tom deliberately didn't watch my preview, but we both mentioned Looney Tunes and Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah, I only heard about this after I'd written the review.
Yeah, because I screened his review yesterday, and I was like, oh, you mentioned Wile E. Coyote? That's awesome. Because they both had that sort of like weird, chaotic energy of like, I built this contraption and I hope it works. That was my experience a lot with the Sky Islands. So is getting around them like fun up there? It's like you have all your, your backpack full of airplanes. Funny rockets and stuff.
You got your backpack full of airplanes, and like Casey was saying, there's a lot of opportunities where like there will already be like a partially built machine that Nintendo's like, hey, you could pick up that steering wheel and put it on that, and then you could go to that island you see over there, right? So you don't have to get deep into contraption building, but yeah, they're very fun to explore because they're very similar to what you were doing in Breath of the Wild, but they are also so different in many ways, in really cool, sort of flavorful ways too. So, yeah.
Awesome.
While we're kind of in the vicinity of this subject, don't look at me like that. It's not that bad. It's a review. Can we very not spoilery talk about how the dungeons are?
Sure.
Which, by the way, Nintendo officially revealed the existence of a day before the release date.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that joke going around of like, I worked on the story for a year and they just tweeted it out. I thought that was maybe they were trying to get ahead of other people finding out, but they put that out there. So before you shoot the messengers, we are not the messengers.
That there are dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom?
Yeah.
So
There's dungeons in a Zelda game. I know.
There were dungeons in Breath of the Wild. People act like there were not. There were.
That's dead on. That's the thing that I think people were like, oh, they hear dungeons as a certain thing because Divine Beasts were dungeons. They were just not traditional, get a map, get a compass, get a key item, use the key items to solve the dungeon sort of traditional thing.
Yeah.
Those are not in Tears of the Kingdom either.
Okay.
There are not traditional map, compass, small keys, key item, lets you explore the world in a different way afterward dungeons.
Right.
There are not. And if you were expecting that, I'm sorry, because I don't think I was expecting that, but I was hoping for it, right? What I will say is the replacement for the Divine Beasts are way more interesting.
Good.
They're not like wildly more complex than what a Divine Beast was, but they are thematically way, way cooler. They are
Anything's better than that camel.
they're very fun little things.
Hate that.
Makes dust and lightning.
Yeah.
Like a real camel.
I hated the fire one the worst in Breath of the Wild. I don't know if I'm the odd one out there.
The camel, you just got to rotate all the cylinders inside of his torso, and he just goes, "Rah!" And then you fight Thunderblight at the edge. Yeah,
the Thunderblight.
The DLC
That's the
one
other
was weirdly
thing.
the best because it's just a giant motorcycle engine.
Again, not getting too much into detail. You're not just fighting 4 versions of Ganon for the bosses, right? Like they are more interesting Zelda bosses. That is something that has come back. Is you might not get Zelda dungeons, but like these are some classic feeling Zelda bosses to them. So yeah, it's not like a huge leap over what the Divine Beasts were, but it is definitely better in my opinion.
Awesome.
Okay.
I also, real quick, sorry, I want to talk about how traditional dungeons that we know them in Zelda is like going through the dungeons, unlocking a thing that lets you explore the world differently. That would not work in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Like they kind of give you everything you need to explore the world at the beginning, because if you had to wait to unlock those things, like there would just be so like you would have to backtrack so much to see things that you've already passed by, and that's not very fun.
And they experimented with this in Link Between Worlds, which basically had a store you could go to and just buy all the items and then go to all the dungeons.
Right.
And I, myself and many others, played it like a fool and just grinded for rupees, bought every item, and then just, ran the world. So it's like, you would have to bottleneck people into specific directions, and it just doesn't work that way.
Well, it also just doesn't work with the building tools because so there's certain Sky Islands there's certain like tasks occasionally, or like paths to get to special areas in the sky, and like there'll be these like sort of almost platforming challenges to get to a certain spot or to get to an island that's real high up or whatever, and you can do that, or you can strap a rocket to a boulder and just skip huge sections of it.
Right.
And that works and is just as valid. And like I skipped a huge section of the game that I was supposed to be doing in a supposedly specific way because I was just like, nah, I'm gonna just fly there, right? And it worked, and I was rewarded for that by just like getting to this thing quicker. So it wouldn't even work to be like, now you have a hook shot because you can get up there, because you can be like, I'm Iron Man. I do not care about that hook shot. Like, it's fine.
Cheaters always win.
We were encountering that problem in some of our like walkthrough guides where the capture that we had was just like, I just flew in. I just flew over the puzzles and I'm here now. And it's like, we kind of have to show people how to do the puzzle though. You can't just be like, just figure it out. Paraglide in from the top. Like use rockets. You're good. Like, because you can. And it's a totally valid like strategy.
That's very funny, Casey, because it's like fundamentally your job is to explain how to solve things and help people through things, and you can do that, but you could also just be like, just fly over the thing, who cares?
It's like, or you can just jump from the top of a mountain and you'll be fine.
And I'll also say I like that more because the Divine Beasts kind of felt like Nintendo was like, everyone go out and you can climb on anything you want as long as you have the stamina for it, but not in this section. This section you have to do exactly what we want in the order you want, and you got to turn these things if you want to get higher into this camel. It felt like they were almost afraid to let you have that power in what they were calling a dungeon at that time. And this one, these things are just in the world. These places are just in the world. So you have all of the tools available to you. So it was like Nintendo was like, you know what? Let's just let people try and break this, right? Let's just let them do that. And if they find this place way too early, then like, okay, they found it way too early. And they have some systems in there to make sure you can't like wildly go off course and in certain ways, which I won't get into, but they also just let you skip huge sections with rockets if you want to. And it's fun and not exploitative.
Yeah.
There's a series of really great interviews that Nintendo's been putting out the last several days leading up to Tears of the Kingdom. There's 5 total. It's with the development team, AG, Aonuma, and some of the others. And they're really good. If you're listening to this podcast, they're not any more spoilery than this podcast is. So you know, go read them. They're really good. But one of the ones that came out today was kind of incredible because they were talking about how a lot of the stuff in Tears of the Kingdom was inspired by watching like gameplay videos, watching streamers like break things, and you know, fly across the map on logs and those things. And they were like, oh, we saw people doing this, and we're like, oh, we should just like give everybody the tools to do this easily. Because like I was never going to go in and, you know, mechanics my way into flying across the map on a log. But if Nintendo hands me a rocket and a log, I'll be like, yeah, sure, I'll try that.
Yeah.
So they were talking about doing that, and they were saying that a lot of the philosophy of Zelda games historically, they've been told, has been they design these puzzles that can really only be solved one way, and you do them, but you get the feeling that you were the first person to solve that.
Yes.
Like you feel like I did this. I puzzled my way through this. No one else can do this. I did it. And they, with Breath of the Wild and now Tears of the Kingdom as well, they really wanted to make that true in some ways. Like you have found a way that no one else has found. And that sounds like what you're describing. And I think that really highlights how true to the philosophy of Zelda they have stayed with this, even if yes, okay, there's no compass in a dungeon, it's not, you know, exactly the way Zelda dungeons have historically been, but maybe it's okay to get rid of some of the mechanical trappings if you are staying true to the spirit of this thing.
I think that's true.
You touched on this in your review. I want to cover it here. It's been a hot topic for years now. I tweeted the other day about how we've all kind of collectively wasted our time speculating about a Switch 2 for so long that we could have learned a musical instrument in that time. We could all be playing a concert in Japan and speaking fluently, but instead we just talked about, is Switch 2 coming for Zelda? And it didn't. So how does this game run? Everything I've seen looks really good, or at least on par with Breath of the Wild. Was this your experience?
No worse than Breath.
Okay.
So Breath of the Wild had slowdowns here and there, right? It did. That's just true. This is, and I've heard that, so there was a patch towards the end of the review that I didn't get a ton of time to play on, but I heard also helped some of this performance.
Okay.
It will drop in some frame rate occasionally during really busy moments. That does happen, but it is absolutely fine, in my opinion, in that it doesn't really take away from the action in terrible ways. It is pretty infrequent. It is not any worse than Breath of the Wild. So if you could stomach whatever Breath of the Wild dropped, this will be just as fine.
Right.
And then on top of that, like, it is, I saw one bug my entire time playing. I played over 100 hours. I had one bug, which is I went into a shrine once and there was like the audio was glitching, and that bug wasn't recreated for anybody else in that same shrine who played it. And that is the only bug that I saw in 100 hours of gameplay.
Right.
So after, you know, Star Wars Jedi came out and was like, oh man, that was buggy. And Pokemon Scarlet and Violet came out last year and everyone was like, oh man, that was buggy.
Yeah.
This is like such a breath of fresh air. It is none of that. It just functions.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone had a hard crash the whole time they were playing.
that's great.
And
No.
I have in most of the other Switch games while playing in early access in recent memory.
Right.
Given the nonsense that you're doing too, like,
Oh, yeah.
like have the map, like jumping off the sky islands, or like, you know, the amount of things on screen, sticking crap together, going really fast on rockets, like
Now,
something should be breaking here, right?
Yeah.
granted, you people out there will break it. Like there's
Yeah.
I'm
You're
sure
just
there are bugs.
some of you are crazy and you're going to do things that like no one thought to do. And so yes, like, this is not us. This is not IGN being like there's no bugs in this whole game, but like
The average player experience
is going to be fine.
is smooth.
Yes.
There is one thing I have to mention. It's not necessarily a bug, but it was an issue in the first island. So the first area you're in, you don't have the paraglider. And you can absolutely get stuck places. And you kind of
I remember this happened to you.
Yeah, and it happened to me twice on the starting island because you can move stuff with Ultrahand. And if you die and come back, all of the stuff you moved with Ultrahand gets put back in its original spot. So if you use Ultrahand to like hop over to a little island with a mini boss that's gonna probably wreck your face the first time you fight it, you don't really have you don't have a way back. you're just kind of stuck there.
You got a warp point.
That's a good.
Yeah.
That is a good note.
Yeah.
Wait, so
Yeah,
is
so-
it soft lock or do you warp out of it? Like,
You
what do
can-
you do?
Oh, you can warp out of it.
Oh, okay.
Right.
But
You
you,
sh- if-
end up
yeah.
somewhere far away.
It's just annoying.
Yeah, and then you have to like go back to it.
And that is really only a major problem
Yep.
until you get your abilities and your glider, which is very early on, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just the starting area. So once you get through your starting area and get the paraglider, that won't happen anymore, which I was very grateful for.
Oh, that's actually a tip I wanted to make sure to tell
yeah.
people. Don't stop doing story stuff until you get the paraglider.
Yeah, I
'Cause-
think we're going to talk about things to do first,
Oh,
and that's
yeah,
definitely
Yeah.
the thing to do first.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna get into some guide territory soon, and again, very spoiler free. We're gonna just like give you some ideas of how to start this game out. But in the meantime, please go check out Tom's review. Read it. It's an excellent script. His VO is amazing. The edit's awesome.
Shout out to Pat Coughlin.
Yeah, it's super,
And also to
super
Mitchell
good.
Saltzman, who helped me with some of the capture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing work. Tom, thank you for breaking all of that down for us, and Casey as well. Casey, I wanted to talk to you because you play games differently than most people play games. You,
Yeah.
I played Link's Awakening with you and worked on the guide together when it came out, and you just fundamentally interact with video games differently than the average person. So first of all, how are you? Because I know this is a massive undertaking to work on this guide.
I'm really tired. I think I told you guys, I think before we started recording this, I considered wearing my hair down today, but that would have required me to wash my hair, so I did not do that. So hi. But yeah, I'm so proud of the guides team, all of us working together to do what we did with the limited amount of resources that we had, and I'm really excited for people to kind of jump in and use our guide and like get help, and I'm here to help. I'm
Yep.
happy to answer questions, and man, yeah, playing usually when I come on NVC after working on a game for a guide that I have had early, I know the game like the back of my hand.
Mhm.
You know, like I am extremely knowledgeable. I know almost everything there is to know. I still feel like I barely know anything about this game. Like
Yeah.
there's just so much to it and so much experimenting you need to do to figure things out,
Yep.
and so many collectibles to find, and it's just mind-blowing. It is mind-boggling
I think
how
it took
much there
me-
is to cover.
I think it took me somewhere in the range of 30 to 35 hours before I felt like I had actually made any amount of dent in it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Like all that time was rewarding, but
Right.
it just felt like I had done nothing.
You two both played what, like 100 hours, something in that
I
ballpark?
played a little over 100 in
Casey?
yeah.
I definitely played less than that, probably maybe around 70. I was
That's-
also not here for 3 days,
Right.
and
that's-
also writing collectibles guides and
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's an item that I was talking to Tom about for a write up that I was doing, and I was trying to get like enough details to do this write up, and Tom had stumbled upon it, which is sort of while playing, and I was asking like everybody else who has had like hands-on with those, I guess Casey and Brendan, like trying to get more details so that I didn't just like constantly hound Tom about it while he's trying to write a review. And no one else had found this thing. No one else had any
Yeah.
idea where this thing was. And it's kind of incredible that in that many hours it just was not stumbled upon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So this is an anecdote from my review, and I'm sorry, we'll get back to Casey, I swear, but like when I beat Breath of the Wild, I had played around 80-ish hours, and I think I only hadn't done like 5 shrines. I
Right.
had done all of the side quests that weren't like kind of the tiny little piddly ones, right? I had played a ton of that game to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm gonna finally beat this and set it down for a minute. And I was around the 80-hour mark. I beat this game around the 80-hour mark, and I have so much stuff, it's insane. I beat this game around the 80-hour mark, and I was like, I haven't done anything yet. It feels like an exaggeration to say it feels like twice the size, but it feels like twice the size.
Wow.
It is remarkable that they made a game that makes Breath of the Wild feel small
Yeah.
when Breath of the Wild felt like one of the biggest games ever made. I don't know how they did it, and I do not envy Casey and the Wiki's team job at all.
It's
You're gonna help us though.
I know, I am.
You're not done. We're all going to help. So we have no idea what you'll do last in Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh no, no idea.
But we could give you some help in a couple of things that you should do first. Casey, you've been painstakingly working on this guide. I'd love to hear from you before we all dive in, or maybe folks who've already started playing. What are some things that we should be doing early on in Tears of the Kingdom?
So before getting into it, I do want to say this was a group effort to get together these tips, and there is a full video with these tips in it by Brendan Graber, and you should go watch that if you want like all of the details.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be extremely spoiler free in this discussion. I'm be very vague. So
Unlike that Brendan guy.
I think we have plenty of spoiler warnings in there, and
Yeah.
like you'll get it. But we already mentioned it. Mainline the story until you get the paraglider.
Yeah.
Like, just do it. I promise it'll make your life so much easier and you'll be so much less mad at yourself.
Yeah, because it doesn't take
Just
super long.
Yeah, it doesn't. You'll get through the starting area and then you just do it. You'll I don't want to spoil anything, but the first I don't know. Like I'm like anyway, get the paraglider. The place it sends you before you can get the paraglider, you should go back and explore that. It's kind of challenging, but you can find some cool armor there. You'll know what I'm talking about after you get the paraglider.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you get the paraglider, you get some main quests. And you might be wondering, which one should I do first? Go to the Hebra Mountains first and do that one first. It'll make traveling and traversing the world a lot easier once you have completed that main quest.
Right.
And there's another main quest that starts you unlocking the camera for the Purapad. And it's like your camera taking device or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go down that quest, you'll unlock the upgrades for that. And it's just a really cool quest that introduces you to a really cool place. And you should just do that. And then you can kind of go from there.
And that one, I'll say also without spoilers, is available right after you get the paraglider in the same area you get the paraglider, and is remarkably easy to just walk past.
Oh yeah.
So I definitely think that's one that if you're sticking around that area, you should look around for the camera quest, because it is super worth doing, and it's super worth doing early.
Yeah, really worth doing early, and it's really worth doing that quest line as you unlock the ability to do so. And you'll go back to the hub often enough that you'll know when you can continue that quest line.
Yeah.
But definitely do that quest line.
Also,
Next,
we're saying hub, but it's not. It's not like a Mass Effect style hub.
No, no.
It's just a city that sort of acts as sort of like the thematic story hub for the adventure, and has a lot of resources. He's got like a free bed. Like you go back there a lot.
Free bed.
You don't have to pay at the.
So it's like Craigslist.
Yeah. Yeah. Just wanted to make that distinction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm thinking of the actual bed, and anyway, you'll see it.
Sorry, Casey.
You'll see it when you get down there and be like, do I want to sleep here? It's your choice. It's your choice. Next thing you should do, as we all know now, the Korok seeds are back. I'm very upset. But because they're Korok seeds, you got to go find Hestu again, or else you will never be able to use the Korok seeds.
Oh.
And so definitely go find Hestu. If you want to try and find him yourself, you can. You'll probably run into him on accident on your way to the main quest in the Hebra Mountains.
Okay.
But if not, you can go watch the video or check out our full guide on where to find Hestu to be able to upgrade your inventory, which is why you want to do that, because you will have a limited amount of slots for your weapons, for your bows, and for your shields, and turning in Korok seeds to this character will let you upgrade those things. It's the same way it works in Breath of the Wild, as far as I know. I have no idea how many Korok seeds there are, but there are a lot. There are a lot of Korok seeds, as far as I know. You will also want to get a horse and go to the stables. You'll also pass by one of these stables on your way to the main quest in the Hebra Mountains. These are just basically things that you need to do to get the full experience and to be able to unlock the things that you probably want. And one of those things is doing the side adventure where you become a reporter at the Lucky Clover Gazette.
Excuse
this is another
me?
Yeah, you got to become a reporter.
Finally,
this is
Reb, you can live out your dream.
You will pass by this location also on your way to the main quest in Heber Mountains, which is why this is the first thing you should do, right? You passing all of these things naturally that you kind of need to do to unlock more things. So
Right.
once you accept that quest there, you can continue the line by going to Woodland Stable, and I won't spoil anything else from there, but that's definitely something you will want to do eventually. Don't ignore the caves and the wells. There's a lot of loot there. It seems like, because sometimes it seems like caves can be frivolous, and it's like, why do I even want to bother going in here? But it is worth your time, I promise.
Yeah.
And then also, I think the last thing you want to do is like, don't ignore the guy trying to hold up his signs on the side of the road. You want to help him stabilize though, because he'll give you some good stuff.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite new things in this game that's tiny. Like it's very small.
It's really
but,
small.
There's a dude who is planting these like advertisement signs all over Hyrule. And they
Advertising
keep
to who?
falling over.
President Hudson, obviously.
President Hudson of Hudson Construction, of course.
Oh yeah. He's an influencer now.
And they keep falling over, so you have to use Ultrahand and like tools or things in the environment to like prop up the sign, and then you go up to him and he's like, and you're like, try letting go, and if the sign stays up, then he's like, hooray, and like mounts it permanently in whatever position it stayed up that you put it in. And this guy will start on just the road, like you'll definitely run into him because he's all over on the roads, but then also like you'll just like be on a mountain and he'll just be there in the snow with the sign.
Yeah, in a blizzard. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing, my dude?
It's incredible. It's such a funny recurring gag. I've done probably dozens of those, and I would continue. I stop every time I see him.
Right. Oh, that's incredible.
I love that. I love recurring things like that. Like Breath of the Wild had Cass playing music on the side of the road.
Yeah.
You hear that and you're like, oh, I want to go to that. Or I guess this is another sound thing, but I remember playing Hollow Knight, and when you hear whatever his name is, Conifer, I think.
Yeah, you can get
like
the map.
humming in the distance, and you're like, oh, that guy again. I love that guy. And
Yeah.
you like beeline to him. That's the same vibe. I love that.
Yeah, it's very good. He always
And
goes, "You have
just-
my support."
Oh.
And
has
backtracking
mine.
on the caves part, I think a lot of games have these little areas you can explore, and sometimes you spend time exploring and you're just like, dang, why did I do that? I just wasted 30 minutes of my life. But Tears of the Kingdom does not do that to you. Like, every exploration and sidetrack you do, you always come away with something that you are glad you did.
Yeah,
And I really appreciate that about this game, because it's very easy for me to get sidetracked.
Right.
And at least I have something to show for it.
Yeah. Who was it on staff? Was it one of you two who was talking about Breath of the Wild, and then I guess now by extension Tears of the Kingdom, about how they're very like, they follow through on their promises, like they don't lie to you. When you see that there's a cave or something interesting on the horizon and you go towards it, that's fulfilled. It's not a waste of your time.
Right,
it's like actually
right.
Yeah.
something there every time. And they like build trust. They don't breach your trust. And that's a really rare thing in
Yeah.
a game.
Yeah.
And it as Casey says, it sounds like Tears is more than making good on that.
yeah,
again.
very
yeah.
true here too.
All right, Casey, was that do you feel people are prepared to go into battle?
I guess last thing, while you're on the starting area, you can always fast travel back. It's not a big deal if you leave first, but just stockpile on those Zone devices in the dispensers when you come across them. Just because it's always nice to have extra like portable pots to cook some food, or like
Yeah.
wings to glide down from a mountain, or a fan to get
Oh, I thought you were gonna say
attached to a
cook some
boat.
wings.
Yeah, cook some wings.
Yeah,
but it's always
you
useful
went
to
from
have
cooking
those
to wings,
things.
and I was immediately like, oh, you can
I'm
make
sorry,
chicken wings?
now I'm hungry.
yeah.
Wait, there are chicken wings in the game, right?
This game maybe,
Oh, there.
yeah.
There's
Yeah.
drumsticks.
Yeah.
Thighs.
Heck yeah.
Bird thighs. Not the Rito. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Not Doritos?
The glider is the only thing that I would say is like on that list that I would say is like,
Necessary.
Yeah.
absolutely do that, and then
Yeah.
the rest of it is all really, really good advice. It's just like, yeah, get the glider. It does not take long. You will be happy you have it.
Awesome. Well, Casey, Tom, thank you so much. We have a bunch of questions from the NVC audience. Once again, just the best people in the whole wide world. We reached out on the NVC Twitter, asked you to send us some questions, and I was hoping we could spend the last bit of the show trying to answer them as best as possible. We'll kind of go through a couple of them pretty quick, but also I want to make sure the voices are heard out there. So, Seth,
Hey, what's up?
you got questions from the audience? I would love to hear
I
them.
got questions.
I can't
Hope
answer them,
for
but
some
Tom and Casey
answers.
can. So let's hit it.
Tom and Casey, please. All right. So KBABZ on TV via Twitter asks, is the reason why it's, and this is a question I want to know, is the reason why it's called Tears of the Kingdom obvious after playing it? And this is something I remember they put off revealing the name for so long because they said, well, if we tell you the name, it's going to spoil too much about the game.
Right.
You'll know too much. And then they said it's Tears of the Kingdom. We're all like, what does that mean? And then we just argued about, is it a pun? Is it a play on words?
Yeah.
So is the reason obvious after playing the game?
You're not gonna know until you finish the game, and that's all I'm gonna say about it.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah,
When you cry?
the answer is yes, but we are not going to tell you why, and there is no way you would ever know. It's not.
Yeah,
like,
you would.
it's
You're not gonna know.
No, it's not like a thing that you would like ever. It's not anything anyone would ever guess. It's just a. But yes, there is a reason it's called Tears of the Kingdom.
What about the Ocarina of Time? What?
What's that about?
Kidding. That was pretty self-explanatory.
Well, you see, Saria gives him an ocarina,
Right.
and then time passes after that.
Interesting. Okay. I was trying to, it's been a long time since I've, played that game. No, Seth, keep going.
Yeah. Crichton20 at Crichton27 asks, how's the story compared to Breath of the Wild?
Oh.
No details, no
Yeah,
spoilers
no,
needed.
no
but
spoilers
just-
whatsoever. This story is cool, y'all.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
It's really cool. Like,
Okay.
so it's not like it's told very similarly, I guess I'll say, to the way Breath of the Wild was, which I wasn't like. It's not like the best way to tell a story, I think, Breath of the Wild structure with like finding the memories.
It's hard when it's an open world and you want people to be able to go things in any order.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the story it tells is super unexpected and super cool and like a genuine high point of this game.
Yes.
It's really neat.
You said
Yeah.
unexpected.
I love it.
Do you still say that? Like, I don't know how weird into like lore videos and theory stuff did you get? Like,
Oh, you don't need to have gone down that rabbit hole to enjoy this.
oh no, I mean, but like,
Oh.
I guess maybe this isn't something I should ask because it does. I guess
Like,
kind of
were the theories correct?
yeah, and not like any specific one, but just like I don't know. Is this something that we could have guessed? Like, is it really? Is it?
I didn't see any theories or anywhere close to what the story actually was.
Yeah,
Personally,
I think that's accurate.
Okay.
And again, that's not like to go into what does happen.
No,
it's
that
just
rules.
like I think that they went a direction that is very surprising, and I'm very glad they did it.
Love it. Great.
But think
So you don't get to kiss Ganon, basically.
Yeah.
is
Well,
what you're
I
telling me.
can't give it away,
Scratch
Seth.
that.
you can if you buy a poster.
That's
I mean, there might. There, honestly, I didn't actually read that many theories, so there might be theories out there that are.
Oh, sure. I'm
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not.
But I don't
suggesting that
know.
no one ever.
Somebody
Okay.
somewhere in the world has guessed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
somebody get Nintendo on the phone for me. I have an idea. I want to license a body pillow of Ganondorf. We have another
It just
question.
hung up.
Oh. Womp, womp. A lot of people want to know. I don't know if either one of you have an answer to this question. A lot of people want to know about amiibo functionality.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's in
Ooh.
the game. Did you try it out? If you did, like, what does it do? What does it unlock?
We do have an answer to this question. Casey,
Good,
do you want to
good,
field it?
Yeah. I mean, it is in there and it works, and we'll have a whole page on all of the amiibo information you would ever want to know going up at launch.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
already happened. So it's on the wiki.
So
Check it out.
Okay.
Should
What I
folks glide on over to that page and check it out?
Oh no.
So what I will say, without giving specifics away, because it's kind of fun to just like get an amiibo, they have cut down on like place an amiibo, get an OP item.
Right.
There's not that anymore. I think they've kind of moved into more of like the sort of fun amiibo rewards rather
Okay.
than the like functionality amiibo rewards.
There's a lot of random nonsense with like non-Zelda amiibos in the first game, where if you just took like Princess Peach, like it just drops like 3 bananas and a fish.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
I think that's still there as far as I understand.
Okay.
Is the silliness, right? And you can still get things, but yeah, you're not going to just be like, oh, an armor set that is very good, like great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what you're not going to get? That's any of the Legend of Zelda amiibo because they're all sold out. And they're like 3 times as expensive. So, one more question. This might be a story spoiler,
Uh-oh.
but Zachary White wants to know, and you could ballpark that.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
How much screen time does shirtless Ganondorf have?
Well, there's only one answer to this question that is both not spoilery and true, which is not enough.
Damn, right on. Perfect answer. Perfect answer to that question.
All right.
Jake Martson asks, can you change the voice acting language? And I actually love that question because I prefer to play my games in Japanese, not because I'm a huge nerd, not because I speak Japanese, but because I like to skip through the dialogue.
I didn't actually check this. I don't know.
I didn't check that either.
Oh, interesting.
You were able to in Breath of the Wild, right?
Yeah.
If you were able to in Breath of the Wild, I would fully imagine you were able to here. It's just not something I actively checked.
Yeah.
I didn't check that either. I checked if I can change the controls, and I checked the HUD settings, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Oh,
You can
that
invert
reminds me
your camera.
that was my question, my personal question. Inverted Y for life.
Mhm.
That's where I'm at. See, some of the questions that were asked that I've picked out, we already went over, like accessibility features. Devin Vias asked why you didn't give it an 11.
Well, we went over that too. Yeah.
It's not possible. There's not enough power. It's like the speed of light. It takes an infinite amount of energy.
Yeah, our video team has no idea how to render that number. It's impossible.
Dan Stapleton would literally explode where he stands
Yeah.
if he had to rewrite the edge.
I remember they showed me their render, and it was a 1 with a question mark. And they're like, where do we go from here? They could not figure it out. Oh, Zach Kaplan, I like this question. Asks, and this is for obviously both of you, while you were playing, was there any point where you shed your own tears? And then Zach makes a pun. Tears of the King Tom.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zach.
That was good.
I don't. Okay, so I'm a robot. I don't cry at media very often, like movies and games and that sort of thing. Very, very, very rarely. Basically, like when the toys in Toy Story 3 are holding hands as they go into the fire was like the only moment.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
But
Good.
there were definitely moments where I got chills. There were definitely moments where I had my jaw on the floor. So there's cool moments.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm swayed by music and children's cartoons, so but I definitely had tears like welling up in my eyes while watching some of these things, just getting emotional about what was happening on the screen.
I'm really getting emotional just hearing this. I'm so excited to play this game. Casey, Seth, Tom, Reb, thank you so much for being here today. I am stunned that this is it, that we're here. The game is out.
Enjoy it, y'all.
Yeah.
I feel like the grizzled old war veteran coming in here being like, you kids don't know what you're in for.
Yeah.
Be sure to read Tom's review. Be sure to check our guide. It is going to be updated by the 2nd for probably several years after.
Oh yeah. We got a fusion guide. We got a things to do first. We got a things it doesn't tell you. We got a how to find Hestu. We got how to tame horses. We got everything. Get all the things. We got all the Korok seeds in the first starting area.
Yep.
We got the first couple walkthroughs.
Nintendo Horse Chat.
Got
it's amazing.
things.
It's amazing. So yeah, go enjoy Tears of the Kingdom. Well, this is, we still have 3 more episodes of Talk of the Kingdom. We're going to be checking in soon on everything else. But for now, that is all the time that we have left for this week's very special episode of NVC. Not NBC, that's a TV network. Be sure to come back every Thursday for more as we skydive into gameplay tips, tricks, secrets, and adventure stories as we explore the vast world of Hyrule. The game is out there in the wild now. I can't wait to see how people in the NVC community play it. Talk of the Kingdom will be available on IGN, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. If you're watching us on YouTube, leave us a like and a nice comment. If you're listening to us on a podcast app, please leave us a nice review. And don't forget to follow Nintendo Voice Chat on Twitter. Oh, if you dig the Zelda shirt I'm wearing, Reb's got a Zelda shirt on too. Check out the IGN store. We've got a ton of awesome Zelda and Tears of the Kingdom merchandise up there right now. And if you like me and Tom's haircuts, check out Razors. They sell them. You can buzz it down, do whatever you want. Have fun up there. Thanks for watching. It's your own Sky Island, have fun. Thanks for watching and listening to Talk of the Kingdom. We'll see you next week. And remember, Tom, this is going to be the first one for you. Remember, NVC is the only place where you can get the tingle. Yeah, I'm sorry, Casey. We should have warned you both of that. Get the tingle.